So we're passing on the controls to Gina Papke, and welcome to the 2015 Tom Hamilton Memorial National Logistics webinar. And we appreciate you coming on short notice. Originally, this was going to be Beth Spencer taking on the Ross updates, but we thank you for being able to fill in and take care of that, Gina. And Gina, are you there? Let me see. Let's take a look at Gina Papke. I'll make sure we unmute her.
Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to show my screen. Bear with me. I have a lot of things going on today, so bear with me. I'll get this so we get to the PowerPoint.
Great.
It's blown up. Okay. Great. Well, thank you for having us here. This will be fairly short. We are pretty busy, but to give you a little bit of background on myself, before I came to the Ross team, I spent 20 years on hotshot crews, and then I spent probably about 10 years at the coordination center at the Northwest Coordination Center there, and then for the past just over 4 years, I have been detailed with the Ross team, and I had my reasons for that. Let me close this down. No, let me just narrow this down. There we go. And so I've been with the Ross team, but I had one purpose, was to get the Viper to Ross interface taken care of, and it looks like we'll finally get that pulled off this year, because it's been a huge workload for all of us. But it's been we've been very busy. Over the last 2 months, we've lost 7 or 8 people, contractual reasons, that hopefully they'll be back up on board. So there's 3 government SMEs that are working on this, and that's why we're a little tapped right now. We've been getting overtime already for the past 2 months, and working on weekends just to try to keep things going. But with that, I'll get right into our presentation. And when I had this, we're going to cover a little bit on what we're working on. There's going to be some new things coming out with Ross this year. It's probably going to be the biggest change to the current Ross version that I've seen in the past 5 years. So some of these changes that are going to occur are going to just hopefully improve some areas that were lacking in the past. So the next screen. Let me see. Hang on, bear with me. It should go. There we go. Let me go back. So we have a couple of different things going on with the Ross project. When Ross first came online in 2003, most of us remember that year. It was very clunky, and there were a lot of issues with Ross. But since that time, I think that it's improved greatly. But what we're finding now is that most of our network speeds are very slow. And if you look at any of the offices anymore, if you take an average dispatch office, they do their radio systems are voice over IP. They're tracking AFF. There's a lot of bandwidth being used with the internet, and so Ross is affected by that. So sometimes it slows down the performance. So there's a project working on that as well, but it's up at a higher level, both for the Department of Interior and the U.S. Forest Service, to try to improve that the bandwidth, so we can run our applications without any slowness or degradation to the systems that we see all the time. But the Ross project staffing changes, we have 2 different things going on. We have what's called the development, or what I call the future Ross, and so that's kind of going on concurrently. So they're going around and talking to as many people as they can to try to get ideas for what people would like to see with Ross, and where they'd like to see it go. And Annette is the project manager of that. And I don't know if anybody on this call or that has been contacted or would be interested in being contacted, let me know, and we can get your names forwarded. They're finishing up the requirements they're gathering efforts to plan and solicit for a contractor this fall to begin work on the new ROS. They've been doing surveys, they've been doing stakeholder interviews, and they're really trying to reach out far and wide to all the stakeholders that have or a need to use ROS or a product that comes from ROS. So I've heard a lot of positive comments about that, so I think that that's going well. The other part of the ROS, which is the part I'm on, is the operations and maintenance, is the part that's keeping ROS going because it's an outdated system. I mean, when it came on in 2003, most applications don't last that long. So this thing has been limping along for 12, 13 years now. And we're trying to maintain that and trying to make some minor improvements to the current system. And currently right now, on paper, Beth Spencer is the project manager for that. So we're trying to do just daily operations, keeping it going and fixing any bug fixes and working on the enhancements to the current ROS, like I'd mentioned earlier. So I'll go to the next screen. So what we have with the operations and maintenance, it's called the modification 5, and here's some of the tasks that are being worked on with the current ROS version or legacy ROS, which is what we're working on. We're working on a Google Map interface, and this may not have any impact on the ordering managers or supply unit leaders, but it may help the expanded or when they're ordering resources for you. So we're kind of looking at using tools like that. It's kind of like, I know that the EGP has something similar, but we're also looking to enhance that as well. We're doing fix of ROS training environment. That's been a huge, I feel, a pitfall of our application is when people try to get trained on ROS. It always seems to be very cumbersome. Things don't work the way they're supposed to, so there's a huge task on that to get that fixed. So when we put on a ROS training session for D310, which is the support dispatcher training, that things will be much more efficient. Of course, the big thing that's coming down with all these computer applications is security and 508 compliance. And there's both at the top level of the Department of Interior as well as the Department of Agriculture, they're really cracking down on security and who can have access to our systems and such, and what's going to be interfaced with what, and so on and so forth. We're working on some fixes to the ICBS to ROS interface issues, and so in fact I'm missing a call right now, but then I'll jump right on after this deal. But there's some bugs with that with the ICBS to ROS interface, so we'll hopefully improve that. Also, too, the other thing, and once again, I'm not sure if the users out there in the field use the reports. A lot of people complain about Cognos, and I'm not by any means an expert in Cognos, but I find that I can get most of the data that I need from using the Cognos reports. And I can build my reports. I feel pretty comfortable, but there's a lot of people who are not data people. I kind of am a data guru on that. I hate when data isn't accurate. So they're going to look at trying to improve the usability of the reports for the end users to meet all needs for those people who are data gurus as well as the average dispatcher out on the street. So working on that. And then the other parts of the task are, and this has nothing to do with anything, but we still, DMS is still kind of hanging out there, and that was the mail system that the dispatchers use. Most of the offices, and I think for the ordering managers, most of us have all set up Gmail, so we can, send messages back and forth to each other via Gmail if there's a connection out at the ICP. And I think most offices have already done that and moved away from DMS, but it is still hanging out there. So that we need to get that out of, it's no longer sustainable, and it's not supportable at all. It's outdated technology. The one I mentioned earlier, the Viper to ROS interface, that is a huge effort, and been very busy in the last couple of months on making sure that we can have an efficient interface with Viper by June. So we're crossing our fingers for that. And for the Viper resources, for those people who aren't familiar with Viper, it's the Forest Service contract, and it's where we get the dispatch priority list, and like when you need a skidder, and if it's going to a Forest Service office, we're going to order a Viper resource. The other thing that we've been working on also at the same time is the Irwin interface for CAD header information to ROS. That's also been a huge deal that we've been working on, and I have a call later on this afternoon in regards to that. And that seems to be working well, and the CADs that are right now will be working with the ROS data is a CAD out of Alaska and a CAD out of Texas. Wildcat is still kind of out there. I'm not sure where Wildcat is at. So, but we're trying to do one system of entry, and so people aren't having to enter things in multiple databases to get their information. And then and Irwin's kind of going out with the 209s and so on and so forth. So Irwin's kind of the interface for all these other applications, and we're trying to make sure we have data standards, that everybody's adhering to data standards, because and I realized this when I worked at the coordination center, that the data standards were kind of all over the map for all these applications. So we're trying to get that dialed down. We're also improving the search for resources screen. So for those of you ordering managers or supply unit leaders that actually do look in ROS, there's going to be more data fields for a search for resources to be able to find what you're looking for maybe more readily. It was good, but we've had some input from the field that they would like to see more search features on that. Unique identifier, this really doesn't have anything to do with you guys, but one of the things that we are working on is a unique identifier for overhead to streamline the IQS to IQCS clearinghouse issues. I got to tell you, that kind of eats our lunch, but it really doesn't have anything to do with you guys. So the things that I do wanted to bring up, I was talking to Carol Chandler, who works here in the office that I happen to sit in, and are some major changes that we made to the catalog, and it was in order to accommodate the Viper interface and some of those catalog changes. And I just want to also kind of reiterate that we in the past, if you guys needed an excavator, that we had generic categories that you could just say, we would get you an excavator. You didn't need to specify the type, but we had to break out those types. So there's 4 types of excavators in the ROS catalog. And I kind of spelled it out here on how many types are in the ROS catalog. And so sometimes when you're ordering one of these specialized pieces of equipment, we made the expanded dispatcher may come back at you and say, what type do you want? The thing that you guys need to know also is that with all of these catalog types, if you do not know the type, a specific type of equipment that you do need, you can order a type any. We've created aliases, what we call aliases, in the catalog. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that, because not everybody knows the difference between a type 1 boom-mounted masticator versus a type 4 boom-mounted masticator. So, and that even goes to the dispatcher as well. There needs to, I think what really needs to happen is someone just needs to put a quick guide, and I was working on this when I was at the coordination center on the spelling out all the minor little differences between these specialized pieces of equipment that are ordered out at the incident anymore. So the list goes on. We've added some other types as well. So we've pretty much divided all the catalog types into the typing. There's a few generic categories like the service mechanic and so forth, but I just wanted to be very clear that there may be some confusion between expanded, because this is going to be new to them as well, and the ordering channels. Like I said, if you're not sure on a specific type, you can order a type any, excavator type any, and you may need to just kind of help that little expanded dispatcher with that. So then when the dispatch center does get the type any, they'll see if they do have a type 1 and a type 2, they may send you a type 1. So if you can't accommodate a type 1, because some of our road systems, I realize, can't accommodate some of these larger pieces of equipment, you need to specify that when you're ordering that. then dispatch will fill with any type unless you guys specify what type you really need. I'll try to, for the most part, those were the basic changes in the ROS catalog that were coming down the pipeline. Let's see, next slide. Fallers, I think this is another confusing thing that I see happening between ordering and the expanded. When fallers are ordered, we have what are the contract fallers, which would be the faller modules or the single fallers, and those are catalog items in ROS, and they always have been. Those are what I call your contract fallers. And I think what happens is that that dispatcher at the other end sometimes may or may not have any knowledge or know the difference between the two. But if you want an agency faller, those mnemonics or position codes, I should say, have changed. And so if you want an agency faller, it's either advanced, intermediate, or basic. So I just wanted to point that out. And I think I see a lot of confusion there when those orders are coming into the expanded on what your needs are out at the unit. I think sometimes it's a learning lesson, maybe from at the expanded level. I think we know that sometimes the skill set that you may get at the expanded may or may not be aware of the difference between the two types of fallers, but seems to be sometimes an issue. The other issue that we definitely see from the expanded, I'm talking about the ordering part of it, is tracking rental vehicles, and it seems to eat our lunch. We spend more time tracking rental vehicles even after the incident is wrapped up, and I have to say, on a personal note, that I don't know how many times I am trying to, for the contracting officer, trying to track down where this vehicle was and if it went from fire to fire, and was it on an E number, was it ever tracked, and I think we need to do a better job. It's kind of eating our lunch, and it's a huge cost. And just a quick story, I just heard a couple of weeks ago that because a dispatcher's name was on the order, because whoever the driver was of that rental vehicle, they did some damage or got a speeding ticket. I'm not quite sure. And anyway, he refused to pay, so they were going to come back and take it out of the dispatcher's paycheck. And it was like, what? So it was this huge ordeal. It's just rental vehicles are just a pain to deal with. But I think we can do a better job on ensuring that we have good data from either the expanded or from the ICP, and making sure that we're all on the same page on these rental vehicles, because it's eating our lunch. So a couple of bullet points I put in here is ensure and validate each vehicle has an assigned E number, whether it is attached to an overhead or not. And I'm talking about specifically the rental vehicles. We don't care about the agency vehicles. And then on the fill description, it makes it easier if we have the license number at a minimum, at a bare minimum. That really helps kind of track that rental vehicle. But I spend all winter running reports for the contracting officers so they can pay the bills that come in, because they're coming in long after the incident is closed up. So I already duplicated that. And then ensure the information at ICP is the same information that Expanded has in ROS. And I think those are some highlights that I came up with as I threw this PowerPoint together, and I apologize for the short presentation, but I do have one last thing. If there's anybody within your group, Martin, that would, has any contributions that you can make to improve ROS efficiency, by all means, please. I have my contact information on the last page, but please get a hold of us, and we will get you in touch with the folks that are going out and doing those interviews. They're going in person. Sometimes they're doing conference calls and such, but we want everybody's involvement. I mean, I believe that ROS it's a tool, and it's just like it's no different to me than a Pulaski unit, and it's not just a dispatch tool. It's just a tool to be used. There's a lot of good information you can get out of it if you have good data going into it. So I can't stress that enough.
Thank you.
There's my contact information, and so that'll be on this as well. And if there's any questions, I can take a few questions.
Okay, let me see here. On your contact info, and you just need the email, right?
Oh, you want the, oh, shoot, gosh darn it.
That's okay. Just tell us, what was your
Yeah,
email?
my email, I can throw it in on the slide. It's gpapke at fs.fed.us, and I apologize, I did not add my email.
Okay, perfect. Could you go back to that last slide that had your phone contact
Yes,
too?
I sure can. Yeah, hang on, let me get back there.
Okay.
There we go.
And I'm looking for questions while we're doing that.
Yeah, no worries, Martin. I realize it was a short presentation, but
that's okay. There was Suzanne is sitting here with me, and let's go ahead and bring that as a question of sorts, having to do with the e-numbers attached to overhead. She had a comment she wanted to throw out there for the group, if you would. Go ahead, Sue.
A couple of years ago, when we started our IBPA with our rental car company, which is Enterprise here in Region 5, the CEO at the time threw in the caveat that if there was overhead, they had to do a support request, or a support order request to attach that O number, which automatically generated an E number in ROS. It did nothing but create confusion. And so as part of our agreement here with the overhead, they only get an overhead number, and that vehicle is married up with that overhead number. The only rentals that get the E number would be the pool cars from like ground support. Is that something that we might have to look at changing again?
you know, I know here in Region 6 is where I've been running the darn reports. I mean, I spend, like I said, several weeks running reports for the contracting officer, tracking that down. I know we do it a little bit differently, but they want E numbers with those rental vehicles. I think it depends on where you are from region to region. I think that's it's very frustrating. We were trying to find ways to improve it with Ross and trying to figure out how things don't get severed if there was a support order created, that it stays with that person throughout his whole incident if he's transferring from incident to incident, or if a vehicle gets left behind. So
I think the take-home lesson there would be make sure you get an E number when an E number is appropriate, depending on your policies. And speaking from the state of Alaska, we have run into this problem as well. And of course, having the E numbers is really the best way to track the vehicles versus a license. I mean, having the license number in there as information is important when it comes to putting that on the field information, because we can track vehicles with license numbers beats the heck out of trying to find it by the VIN number. And
yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
And Sue has another one she wanted to bring up. Go ahead, Sue.
I saw that you briefly talked about the Ross Viper interface.
Yes.
And if you threw this up on the screen, forgive me for asking again, but some folks are talking that the non-local resource tab in Ross is going to go away, meaning that each dispatch couldn't share what's in their dispatch priority list. Is that true?
For Viper resources, yes.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. I know that Region 5 is collecting a response, so hopefully we can get that out too.
Right. Mary Galzin has been, working with you guys. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Josh, do you see any other written questions out there?
Yeah, there are a few. First one's from Rick Martin, and he asks, for those of us who are not current employees, what is 508 compliance?
It's for handicapped, hearing impaired, all that kind of stuff. And I guess it's a big thing with the government that we're having to comply with all of our applications, and making sure the font's big enough, and making sure that there's a portion for hearing impaired, and that's what 508 compliance
Many other
is.
people in the room were saying it's an accessibility is the term.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's probably a better term for it.
Okay. The next one's from James Schmidt, and he asks, as part of future security updates, will Ross be moving toward PIV and PIVI or PIV1, not sure, for login and or status check-in for full-time individuals with these cards?
With the cards, right now, I mean, you have to go through the NAP, and they're looking at changing things that, right now there is no PII. Well, there is some, but I mean, there's no Social Security numbers or birth dates in the system. But you still have to go through the NAP in order to get an account to be able to access Ross. You have to change your password every 60 days, but we're not going to be needing a card at this point to access Ross at all. You still need to go through and get a NAP account to get an account, whether you're web statusing. Then you needed to be added as a user to Ross, so you can either web status or use the Ross application.
Okay. A couple questions from, or comments from Holly Goff. She says, this needs to be more uniform from region to region. This causes more headaches in itself.
In specifics to what, in regards to what?
Let's see, she has another comment. Maybe this is, especially when California and Oregon are each part of a different region and the individual will drive the cars across state lines to another region. Oh, and she just wrote in and says about rental cars.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, the case in point where a dispatcher was going to get the charges against her, I think that an individual didn't come across from California, but it did come across from another state with a rental vehicle, and then that rental vehicle ended up in Washington, and with all the fines incurred upon it. So I do agree. That's why it was crucial that we knew which vehicle it was and who it was tied to.
Holly, did you want to add anything in your own words? I just unmuted you. Holly, if you have a microphone. Maybe that answered it. Thank you. Go ahead, Josh. Anything else?
Nope, that was it.
Great.
Oh.
Well, gosh, I thank you for your time. I hope I got you on schedule.
Did you have another go back there, Josh?
Holly just wrote back and said she doesn't have a working mic.
Oh, okay. Outstanding. Well, thanks so much for the presentation, Gina, and especially on the spur of the moment that you just entered the fray here, like probably yesterday afternoon. You probably got the word.
No, it was this morning.
Oh.
It was this morning.
That's what we call flexibility.
That's right. But thank you guys so much, and you guys enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do now